So there I was at the border, and I handed my passport to the customs agent, and this Rwandan customs agent, began to look at my passport, and he started to laugh. And he said, "This is a Rwandan name. Where did you get this name?" I immediately reacted. I said, "What do you mean? My granddaddy immigrated from Italy, from Sicily in 1910 to the U.S. You can look on Google Earth and look up Sicily and find a little town called Butera." But I began to then research and analyze and ask people, "Hey, do you know any other Rwandans by the name of Butera?" And I found that my last name, my Italian name, is a common name in Rwanda. Well, I'd been there preaching for a couple of weeks in Rwanda and Uganda, preaching from the book of Ephesians. And this lesson that I learned at the border just underlined what I'd been learning and teaching from the book of Ephesians. In that book, Paul talks about our oneness in Christ. And I believe that everybody all around the world has a right and a need to have a place, an irrevocable place that is their own, that's our own. And I love the verse in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 19, where Paul says, "Now therefore you are no longer strangers and exiles, but fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God." But how shall we ever find our place when race and nations and socioeconomic levels and all sorts of other issues become dividing walls between us? And people say to us, "You're no good. Get out of here." Well, I think there's a lot to learn in this biblical book of Ephesians that can help us today in the 21st century malaise that we find ourselves, where so often we feel cut off from others, divided and rejected. And I'd like to share a couple of big lessons from this book. Grace and union. The grace of God and union with Christ. That causes us to begin to have a perspective to get over this sense of rejection and being rejected. Grace is a big word, and it's used here of the dynamic power of God to lift us and take us to heaven. And union is a theme throughout the book. Over 70 times in this book, the phrases "in Christ," "in Him," and "with Christ" have a theme of solidarity, where we are joined together with Christ, and then also joined together with one another. And there's a sense of solidarity and union with God that can give us a sense of belonging and overcoming this feeling of being rejected. When I was a boy playing football on the street in Youngstown, Ohio in the fall of 1968, my daddy was a preacher, Methodist church on the corner. The church was all white constituents, but the church was in the midst of an all-black neighborhood. We lived in the parsonage beside the church, and we were the only white folks on the street. I was on the street playing ball with my buddies. The way we would do is that when a car would come, yell "car," and step aside and let the car go through. This time the car stopped, and we gathered around the car. It was a cousin of one of the players, and after the short conversation, the driver of the car looked at me, the only white face in the crowd. He spit on the ground and he drove away. We've all had experiences where we felt rejected at some level. But there's a great value in finding the love of God to give us a sense and understanding that we have a place in this world.